a devastating acknowledgement. Joining me now is former Philadelphia Police Commissioner CHARLES RAMSEY. Commissioner Ramsey, what went through your mind when you heard that exchange?
Well, I mean, he's still trying to, in a way, justify what took place, and there is no justification for what took place. Just about everything they did was wrong, with the exception of evacuating the additional children and teachers from the school itself. There's no way you don't make entry and confront the gunman. You have to. Shots had already been fired, kids had been wounded, and people need to understand that the devastating injuries that many of those kids sustained, there's no doubt some of those children bled to death while waiting for police to make entry. There's just no question in my mind that that probably took place. You cannot justify 19 cops outside that classroom door. That's one cop for every dead child. And they didn't make entry. There's no way you can justify that. But it really does point to why those first couple of press conferences, they were so evasive. They knew that they screwed up. And they were trying to cover the tracks.
Yeah, it adds a certain insult to injury. I mean, if you look at this timeline, the time that goes by, not only was it 78 minutes, but in that time, 911 call after 911 call from children in that classroom happening for, probably a good half an hour to 45 minutes before police officers finally went in. Chief Ramsey, I also want to point out earlier, Senator John Cornyn, who is actually involved in some gun conversations on Capitol Hill, he tweeted out that the second guessing and finger pointing among state and local law enforcement is destructive, distracting, and unfair. Complex scenarios require split-second decisions. Easy to criticize with 2020 hindsight. What's your reaction to that?
Well, last time I checked, 78 minutes isn't split second. I mean, that's a long time. And so I understand where he's coming from. But if we do not take a look at these cases that have taken place and we don't learn from it, how do we improve? I mean, we learned from Columbine, we learned from Virginia Tech, we learned from Parkland, we learned from all these cases, including this one. Political leaders can say whatever they want. And I would argue that this doesn't stop with the incident commander. I have been on a lot of scenes, and one of the first things you do if you've got a major scene like this, you contact your bosses. So you would make phone calls to whoever it is that needs to be notified to give them a heads up as to what you got and what's going on. What did they do during that 78-minute period? Why did they not challenge why police weren't making entry?
I do want to ask you about that. I do want to ask you about that, though. I mean, why do you think that they did not make that entry? We heard some officers in Uvalde saying, well, they could have been shot. We also know that the shooter had in his possession an assault-style weapon that is very lethal. Do you think that the kind of weapon, the amount of ammunition factored into the decision not to go into that room as soon as possible?
Well, of course, it's risky. I mean, that's all part of the training. I mean, cops do risk their lives. But what about those children? I mean, when you look at the footage, those officers had long guns. I mean, they were holding the crowd back. You could see the guns right there. I mean, you make those decisions, you go in. Is it risky? Absolutely, it's risky. You make a tactical decision as to how you're going to approach it. This is on the first floor. You've got windows there, things you could do to distract the gunman while someone else is coming through the door. Is it risky? Yeah. But you've got 19 children who have died as a result of that. What chance did they have at the time? I mean, that's part of the business. It's part of the job. And to say that you didn't go in because you might get shot, I don't know. That's just not acceptable. I'm sorry. If you don't have the nerve to do what you need to do, then you should find another occupation.
Literally in one of the training guidelines, that is what it says. If you're not willing to put your life on the line, this is not the job for you. Lots of questions there for these officers. Thank you so much, Commissioner Ramsey.